Proverbs 22:6 says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." The Raise Them Up podcast equips parents with the information they need to know to train up their children with a biblical worldview. Your host for Raise Them Up is Fred Zelenko, the Executive Director of the Family Vision Ministry.
Thanks for joining us on Raise Them Up. I'm Fred Zelenko. I'm the Executive Director of the Family Vision Ministry, which encompasses a 12,000 square foot building in St. Peters, Missouri, where we house a free Christian lending library since 2005. So we've been serving Christian families for a long time, and a homeschool consignment shop where we resell homeschool curriculum for parents, and we do ship nationwide. And most recently, we developed a digital ministry, which includes Raise Them Up, a podcast. And since we do serve the homeschool community, it's only proper that I have and welcome as our guest today Amanda Schenkenberger, because she's been involved in homeschooling for 17 years as a homeschool child, homeschool parent, and now a homeschool coach. And it's appropriate because May is Homeschool Awareness Month. Welcome, Amanda.
Hi, Fred. Thanks so much for having me.
And you're way out in Oregon.
I am way out there.
So tell me about your homeschool experience. You started out as a homeschool child, right?
Yeah. My parents, particularly my dad, at the time I was supposed to enter, kindergarten, preschool. He didn't see that public schools then were doing enough of writing, reading, and arithmetic. And so he thought he could do a better job, and he talked my mom into it. So I hadn't been to public school until high school.
Now, I was reading up on your biography, and you target homeschool moms. So what's the percentage of parents that are teaching their own children? Is it, I would imagine it's moms, more so moms than dads.
Yeah, it definitely is more leans towards the mom and dad still being the provider of the family financially. Sometimes I help families where both the parents are working, but typically, simply because my experiences as a mom, I serve moms. And so that's who I see the most. But I do have homeschool dads reach out every now and then.
Now, you say serve moms. How does your homeschool coaching work?
Yeah, so I right now currently serve families that are already homeschooling. And so I'm happy to shoot ideas back and forth with anybody who is teetering on the edge of wanting to jump in, because you should, because it's amazing. But with the women I work with, they're already homeschooling moms. And what I help them do is calm the chaos and confidently homeschool so that we can blend rigorous academics with joyful learning and connection. So if you are trying to marry life and academics and having a good relationship with your children and it's not going well, that's really where I step in and I help mom learn how to navigate her own emotions, the child's emotions. How do we enhance learning, along with how do we actually plan for homeschooling? Because once we get the curriculum, that doesn't necessarily help us put the pieces together. So there's a lot that we do behind the scenes in my program.
So let's go through a little bit of your program, because you talk about chaos. So the first thing is a lot of kids are resistant, right?
They can be. You would actually be surprised, Fred. A lot of the moms that I see, I primarily talk to moms on Facebook. And a lot of the moms that I see that are leaning towards homeschooling, it's their children are actually wanting this. Their kids are burnt out on the public school environment. And so when we bring those kids home, sometimes resistance does come up. And what I like to say is resistance is always an opportunity for connection. There is a reason your child is resisting something. And as not just the parent, but as the teacher, it's our job to get to that underlying reason with that resistance. And so that could be something like a learning challenge, or maybe they're struggling with, for example, I've got 4 kids. They're struggling to focus because their brothers are distracting and then they're kind of tired of it, So that's where when resistance does come up, I teach moms to move through it by connecting with their kids.
You started out as a homeschool student, so you never went to public school.
Well, I did in high school. My
Okay.
parents unfortunately got divorced.
Uh-huh.
And there was like, well, what do we do with Amanda? My mom's a single mom and she had to go work. My dad moved away for a job and I stayed with my mom. I was a teenager. And so there really wasn't any other options for me at that time. The internet was still, getting birthed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to public high school. And honestly, Fred, I was really scared to jump into high school. I had done very little formal learning time. I
Mm-hmm.
had done a lot of play and exploration. I actually got to travel to Europe being sponsored for a sport I was doing. So I got to compete internationally with what I was doing. So homeschooling gave me quite a lot of life experience. So I didn't do very much formal learning. So when I entered that environment, I was nervous because I thought all these kids had been preparing their entire lives to excel academically.
Right.
But it turned out I didn't need to worry about any of that because I was at the top of most of my classes. And I graduated high school 9 out of like 310.
Wow.
So I knew right away, I knew a better way to learn. And I wasn't going to put my own kids in public school.
You said you competed internationally in what sport?
So it's called vaulting.
Yeah.
And it's gymnastics on horseback. It's not pole vaulting. It's not vaulting in gymnastics. It's an older European sport. And the horse is galloping in a circle on a lunge line.
Yeah.
And you get on top of the horse and you're doing gymnastics on the back. So it's not trick riding. It's still different. And you do it sometimes by yourself with another person or even up to 3 people on the back of the horse while it's galloping. In a circle, you're doing different moves together.
Because regular gymnastics wasn't challenging enough or what?
It wasn't enough. No, we were just an equestrian family. My mom loved horses. And so I was kind of an intense personality. Good thing my parents didn't put me in public school. I'm sure I would have drove the teachers crazy. So I did vaulting, which is the gymnastics on horseback. So yeah, I like intensity. So it worked out for me.
Okay, so you work with parents or you work with moms that have had kids in public school and now are bringing them home to homeschool, which I'm sure is very intimidating for the moms and a big responsibility as well. And so walk us through the process. I reach out to you, and then what happens?
Yeah. So what I love to do, I always like to serve first. Sometimes we, as moms, we get a little stuck and in our head, and we just need 1 or 2 pieces of information, and then we're like, good, and we're out of the gate, and we've solved a major problem in our life, in our homeschooling life. And so I like to work with moms a couple of times where we work on like, okay, where are you at now? Where do you want to be? And what's stopping you in between? And we figure out some really good next steps for you to try. Then we usually come back together about a week later to see how that's gone. And if it went well and you guys are like, oh yeah, we solved our problem. Great. I've served you and you're on your way. But if there are more things that came up, like, oh, I tried that, but then there was more resistance here, or we did that and it worked, but then there's this other problem over here, and there's actually 10 problems, Amanda. That's where we can begin to establish a relationship to see if working together is a good fit.
Oh, okay. So you kind of get to know each other first,
Yeah,
solve a problem, and then move on from there.
absolutely. Yeah.
What do you find is the number one challenge with new homeschooling parents?
So I think moms face a lot of overwhelm, right? There is a lot of information out there. This is a brand new way of life. It's almost like you're trying to teach somebody to breathe differently, because most of the moms I'm working with, they were in public school themselves, and they've never had the opportunity to develop their own system of ways they want to do things at home. They went from public school to college to a job, and they tell you, here's when you show up, here's what you do, and then you can leave at this time.
Okay.
Now they're the one calling the shots. And on top of that, not having ever done that before, they're trying to wrangle all these tiny humans who are little chaos tornadoes. And so it can feel very overwhelming. And then the whole, oh my gosh, I'm educating my children. People have gone to school for this for 4+ years. Who am I to educate my children? So there's a lot that comes up for moms when they step into homeschooling. And that's not even talking about the child's experience. So there's a lot of facets.
Yeah. What's the most challenging subject for a homeschool parent? Math?
Math sometimes. Math comes up. I think most moms are concerned about science, especially once we head into the higher level, like middle school, high school area, because like, oh, I don't have a microscope. Oh, there's tools we need to like dissect things. I don't, unless they had a personal proclivity for the sciences, they just do not feel equipped, even reading from a textbook, to teach their child about science.
Do you also counsel parents on what am I looking for? Certification, that their kids have met the requirements of a certain grade? How does that work?
So this depends on what state you live in. There are some states where your children need to be tested academically and pass the test. There are certain states where you have to track hours and submit them, or submit different projects, right? So I work with each mom depending on what her state laws are, and then what her and her like family's goals are for education. We actually go really deep into this inside the program, because every family is different. Some families really like the unschooling route and they want it to be a free learning experience. Whereas other families, they want to be very rigorous in their academics and challenge their kids to do well. And so we get very deep on this because it's different for every family.
Yeah.
So it really depends on state laws, because that dictates some of what we do, and then what they want as a family.
Okay. Well, we saw a big uptick in our homeschool consignment shop sales at the end of last summer. We know that the pandemic increased homeschooling by something like 50%.
It's crazy, yeah.
Did you notice the same uptick in your business?
So I started just after the pandemic had got going. And so I had, just as a homeschool mom, a well-established homeschool mom in my community, I had so many people reach out. And then at our church, we had already had established a homeschool mom group. And so our group like tripled in size during this time, because moms were having to navigate this. And then on the other hand, they're like, well, when this is over, like, maybe I want to keep homeschooling. So yeah, I saw that locally, and a lot of people were reaching out to me personally, because I had already been telling people, you should homeschool. It's amazing. It's the best. So I got people reaching out anyways.
Do you address the topic with moms about spending time away from their children?
Yeah, I do. I think that this is actually really important, because some moms are very filled by being around their children all the time. And that's a beautiful thing. Some of us, like myself, are not. And I need to have a break to have my own thoughts in my head. I mean, this happens a lot for moms with younger kids, or maybe if she has not done the job she's wanted to do with establishing discipline and being the authority in the home when dad is gone. And so mom doesn't have a lot of thinking space. And when we don't have thinking space, that's adding to the overwhelm. And when we're overwhelmed, our emotions begin to cloud all of the logical thinking. And, oh, okay, how do we do this math problem? Or what's a good solution here? It kind of steals our creativity and our collaborative problem solving skills. So if you're that kind of mom, I do advocate for having time away to be by yourself, or to be with your girlfriends. Or, I have lived and breathed only because my church service, my children don't need to be in it. So I tell my kids, like, mommy needs to worship Jesus.
Yeah.
I love you. Go have fun in class.
Yeah. What percentage would you say are Christian families that homeschool?
The homeschool. All the moms I work with are Christians.
Okay.
I have seen a growing group of secular homeschooling parents for a variety of reasons, but I look at the stats here and there, and they vary. I think it's still overwhelmingly Christian, but the secular homeschooling population is very much growing, which is a beautiful thing to see as well.
And I think we need to take time and dispel the myths, because there's a lot of people out there that think Christian families homeschool because they want to shelter their children, or they want to keep them withdrawn from society. And they say, oh, kids that are homeschooled don't get the socialization, don't develop socialization skills and the like. You want to address those?
Yeah. So what I do like to say is homeschooling is an amplifier. And if your family is already weird, homeschooling's not going to help.
Yeah.
So let me put that out there first. But as a homeschool kid who had a variety of experiences, like I got to go to Europe without my parents as a 9-year-old child.
Really?
I obviously had chaperones.
Yeah.
Yes, I had chaperones, but I was 9. So I was pretty well-rounded socially as a kid. I was on a team. And so when I would get introduced to new people and they'd be like, oh, where do you go to school? And I'd say, I'm homeschooled. They always turn their head to the side and like scrunch their eyes and their nose. And they would say, but you're not weird. And as a little girl, I was like, thank you. Like, what do you say to that?
Yeah.
So this myth has been around for a while. But what I think parents are worried about is they've seen the negative implications of homeschooling. Like if you are intentionally pulling your child out for the purpose of not socializing them and your family's already weird, this is kind of like the stigma. But if you are an active member of your community, whatever that community that is, you're taking your children to the grocery store with you. They go with you to church, or they go with you. Like my kids, I work from home. Lots of families work from home. They can come in sometimes and I'm doing work with them. They met some of my clients, they know how to talk to people.
Yeah. We
get out in the world. And so as long as you are an active member of your community, your children are going to go with you and they're going to learn those skills. So unless you yourself are sheltered, then you have no worries about your children being sheltered.
I think too that as more and more secular parents attempt homeschooling or get into homeschooling, I think those myths are going to disappear. I think a lot of secular parents are moving towards homeschooling because they don't like what's going on in the public schools, especially with the test scores.
Yeah.
And then also the DEI, the CRT, the social emotional learning, the sexual indoctrination and the like. So that's pushing parents towards homeschooling as well. And I think some of those myths are going to go away. And hopefully so, because you have a great opportunity in front of you as a homeschool parent.
Yeah, you do. So pre-pandemic, when my kids and I would be out at a park, and this is something that homeschool moms across the community, this is our experience. A mom will comment on the politeness of our children. Oh, your child's so sweet. Look, they're sharing, yada, yada, something. They'll say something to the effect of the politeness of our children. And then we would say, oh, yeah, we homeschool them. And they'd be like, oh, aren't you worried about socialization? And it's like literally laughable how many times I'm like, you just said how polite my child was.
Yeah.
It's like a running joke. Now, when I tell people, like when we're at a park, oh, we homeschool. Now what I'm getting is, oh, I wish we could do that. So I think the tide is already starting to shift because people like myself, people who have homeschooled their children and now they're adults are coming out and we're like, do you see my child? They're a perfectly functioning adult. And we're seeing even colleges recruit homeschooling children, homeschooling teens, because they can see that their academic excellence is above what is being produced by public schools. It's not that a homeschool child is smarter, it's just that they have more opportunity. And when we lean into the opportunity provided by homeschooling via child-led learning, or we're just like communicating and talking, having meaningful conversations, we're teaching our children critical thinking skills, how to navigate conflict, and why learning is valuable and why you want to pursue it. Right. And so we have this beautiful opportunity in front of us to really actually create world changers rather than just more followers. And as much as that might hurt somebody who like has their children in public school still, it's important for you to like understand the consequences of the choices of keeping your children in public school. And I'm a working homeschool mom. Like people tell me, oh, I work, I can't do that. I'm like, yes, you can.
Yeah.
We've got to get into a space where we have a growth mindset, because ultimately when we teach our children to have a growth mindset, they take risks and they make improvements and innovation, and everything that made America great comes back. Right. And so I mean, there's so much I could say into that.
Well, it sort of joins up with what we do at Family Vision Media. We are in the business on the digital side of continually encouraging parents to live a Christian worldview in their home. So the children see it lived out.
Yeah.
And then we may not lose them when they go off to college, okay? And I think George Barna's research indicates that only something like 12% of evangelical Christians are living a biblical worldview in their home. In the general population, that's about 5%. And with single parents, it's 6%. So when parents or people out in society see that your children are behaving well, it's a wonderful testament to their belief in and their faith, right?
Absolutely.
It's an example that they're setting that they don't even know they're setting, okay? So, we're big homeschool advocates. We're also parental choice advocates and educational choice advocates here at the Family Vision. And that's important because the parents are the first teachers, right? Yeah, and then it sets an example going forward. Have you ever said to someone, after you got to know the parent and you said, well, homeschooling is not for you?
Have I ever said that to somebody? No. The thing I like to say about homeschool parents or moms is as long as you're willing and resourceful, we can figure this out. As long as you're willing and then resourceful, we can figure this out. Even moms.
It's a commitment, though.
It's a commitment. Yeah. So is having a kid. That's a commitment.
But we can't de-emphasize the fact that it's work, right?
100%. And what I think about homeschooling for moms is we knew it was going to be hard, but we didn't realize it was going to be a journey of self-discovery because we have our sweet children right in front of us, rubbing us the wrong way. And we want to react in our flesh. And we have the best motivator to have self-improvement and go to God with our shortcomings and ask him to help us. The best motivator. I would not do that for myself. I would do it for my children. So I am a massively better person because I have chosen homeschooling. And that, I think, honestly, is probably what scares homeschool moms the most and is the hardest thing for them because it's a heart-centered journey that you can really, in my opinion, only do well with the Lord. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that is probably the biggest commitment outside of the pressure of the education part.
In Christian homes, homeschooling requires prayer.
Lots
of prayer. Lots of prayer. Oh, I wanted to ask you too, but what about special needs children?
Yeah. So I would say for special needs children, so I want to make a little bit of a distinction.
Okay.
I think there's neurodivergent children who might have a learning challenge or like a sensory challenge or an emotional challenge that makes them need to learn differently. That doesn't necessarily mean they have a disability. Now, for somebody who's neurodivergent, out of the box learner, homeschooling can be absolutely amazing for these kids because it sets them free to learn the way their body and brain is wired to learn. Instead of labeling them with something like there's something wrong with you, you have ADHD, right? There's nothing wrong with you. There's a different way for you to learn, and this factory box isn't going to work for you. And so I honestly think that ADHD can be a superpower, but you have to learn how to hone it. And that can be done very well through homeschooling. Now, when we think about special needs kids, I also think homeschooling can be a great environment. Now, there's a lot of amazing educators out there who go into special needs, and they are just the tenderest, most sweet people. But the public system is really beginning to fail them. There is such a cut in funding, mostly because people are pulling their children out. But there's such a cut in funding. And I have just seen, even locally, a lot of abuse from teachers who are spent, is even in special needs. Right. And so I just have to look locally. I don't even have to look nationally. I just go onto one of my local Facebook homeschool groups, and it's actually really, really sad. Yeah. But I think for moms with kids who have severe disabilities, I think that bringing them home, but you're like having some kind of support, whether that's working with an OT, whether that's working with somebody who just works with special needs kids coming in to support you, because there's a lot of education that actually needs to happen for a mom when we're talking about special needs kids. And so I think if mom has the space, because it would be difficult to work, depending on the severeness of the disability. Mom just needs more support. And that might mean neighbors, that might mean family, that might mean, that probably means something like working with an occupational therapist when we get into that situation. So mom really does need extra support in those scenarios. But as far as like homeschooling in general or neurodivergent children, like, yes, this is going to be 100% better.
Right.
I promise.
Right.
But the severe special needs, mom needs support, education, and like more than just her, 100%.
You're a mental health practitioner.
Yes.
What exactly does that mean?
Yeah. So I work with obviously homeschool moms, but just women in general when it comes to our mental space and how our physical bodies respond to different situations in life. So when we're talking about, oh, my kid is resisting for the umpteenth time today, and I want to yell at them. Well, that starts in understanding ourselves and having a mental awareness about our own emotions, about the sensations in our bodies, and how do we navigate that as homeschool moms.
Right.
So that's really where it comes in, that it's not just like, I don't just talk about how do we educate our children well from home, but how do we navigate our emotions and our children's emotions so that we can make learning joyfully connected rather than disconnected and just do the list.
So you're someone a mom can vent to or vent with if they're feeling the particular frustrations of being around their kids 24 hours a day and also homeschooling them as well.
I wouldn't use the word vent, because I honestly, from a mental health like perspective, when we vent, we're actually often, I wouldn't say 100% of the time, we're stirring up more of those negative emotions.
Okay.
Stirring them up. We're making them bigger, and we're creating more conflict within our bodies and our minds. And so what I really try to help moms do is experience them and then surrender them to the Lord and move through them rather than build up the resentment.
Right.
Because we don't want to create those neural pathways in our bodies and our nervous systems. That's where those things just can get really out of line, and we're really causing ourselves more problems than we're helping.
And so you're keeping it positive and God-centered.
Yes. Yeah.
So how do we, how does a mom hire you?
Yeah. So that would be, like I explained before, we would just do a connect call
to
see where you're at, what do you want to create, and what's stopping you, so that we can create an action plan you can try in the next week.
Okay.
And so that would be coming to me at homeschoolfamilylegacy.com/connect.
Okay.
Finding a time on the schedule where we can meet for about 15, 20 minutes to talk about these things. homeschoolfamilylegacy.com/connect.
Mm-hmm.
Then my calendar will pop up, and you can find a time on there where we can connect and see where you're at. Again, it's pretty quick, 15, 20 minutes to create an action plan for you, some clear next steps. And then we'll meet about a week later so that we can see how it's going. And if your problem's solved, fabulous. Like, there you go. You can keep going on the homeschool journey. But if you're needing some more support and help, that's where we would begin to discuss us working together.
Okay. So there are people that just are one and done. And then there are people that figure out, hey, I really need Amanda to be a part of this whole process, this whole situation.
Yeah.
Short of teaching the children yourself.
Yeah, that's sometimes people are like, oh, you're a homeschool coach. You'll teach my kids for me. I'm like, no, I teach you how to teach your kids.
Yeah.
Because they're your kids.
Right. And you have 4 boys.
I have 4 boys.
And
that's
are
right.
you still homeschooling, or they've graduated on?
My youngest is 4. My oldest is 11. So I'm still very much in the throes of homeschooling. A lot of the moms I help usually have kids 12 and under. I do help moms who have kids in high school too.
Yeah.
But the chunk of the moms that I help, they're middle school, elementary years, and it's a blast. It's so fun, Fred.
Are you going to homeschool your boys, you think, through their high school years?
Well, that'll really depend on them. My oldest is he's pretty fast tracked on like the academic side of things.
Yeah.
So we probably, if he wants to pursue college, we would do something along the lines of dual enrollment or starting college early at a community college. But he loves science. He also feels called to be a pastor. So he's still navigating that. He's 11. So do you want to go to Bible school? Do you want to go be a missionary? Like, what do you want to do, kid? So he's got a few years before he needs to decide, but we have no intention on putting them in a public school system.
Okay. I was wondering about that. You and I talked off the air about John Taylor Gatto.
Yeah.
And I want to close this podcast with a quote from him. He said, "You can make your own son or daughter one of a kind if you have the time and the will to do so. School can only make them part of the hive, part of the herd, or the anthill." You agree or disagree? Well, first of all, we should probably tell people who John Taylor Gatto was. John Taylor Gatto was in the New York public school system as a teacher for, I think, 28 years. Mm-hmm. He was Teacher of the Year in 1989, 90, and 91 in the city of New York. And he was State Teacher of the Year in 1991. And when he got up to accept his award, he basically retired from public education saying, it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't work. And that's where that quote came from. And he also became a homeschool advocate towards the end of his life. Mm-hmm. So do you agree with him?
Yeah. So one of the things that John Taylor Gatto talks about is that the public school system, it's functioning the way it was designed to create followers, not independent thinkers. And having attended public school, and I had this one teacher, Senor Nelson, man, he believed in me. He was just an incredible teacher. And so, I think those shining heroes of the public school system are some of these teachers. Right. But the system is doing what it was meant to do and create followers. And if we want our children to be independent thinkers and to be bold for Jesus, these are things that we need to bring them home and educate them how to do. And critical thinking isn't something that you are like, okay, read this book, now take a test on it. You've got to give them real life situations in order to work these problems out for themselves and then provide guidance on, okay, what would you do? I don't know. Okay, what's the first thing you could do? But that is not going to be available to them in the public school system, especially now, because a teacher can't give one-on-one attention like that to a student. They've got potentially 35 other kids in the class. Yeah. So that kind of thinking doesn't get done in the public school system, even if you have the best teacher in the world in the class. It's just not going to work. Right. So that's why bringing our kids home can be so powerful, because it's true discipleship. Right? Jesus, the most perfect man who walked the earth, only had 12. Yeah. The 4 is a lot, So if we get anywhere close to 12, I think we're a little bit overstretched.
Yes.
That's my personal opinion.
Yeah. Amanda Schenkenberger, give us the web address again and how parents interested in homeschooling or are already in homeschooling but need help, how do they contact you?
So homeschoolfamilylegacy.com/connect. That'll bring up my calendar and we can find a time to meet together. Or if you want to just explore the website, it's homeschoolfamilylegacy.com.
Yeah. And you've been doing this for such a long time, and you have this smile on your face. It's wonderful.
It's really the best, Fred. Yeah. I wouldn't trade it for the world. Yeah. Like billions of dollars. No. I'm happy with my children. Thank you.
Yeah, it's wonderful. You have a very infectious nature, and I'm sure that helps to, calm the parents out there that might be intimidated by the process and so on. I want to thank you for joining us today on Raise Them Up, and we'll be tracking your progress. And you got any books coming out or anything?
I do have some books planned, but I wouldn't begin writing them until the fall. So. We're going to have some fun this summer first.
Or when your kids are out of school.
No, that'll be way too late, Fred. People need these books yesterday.
That's right. We have to encourage more parents to get involved in homeschooling. And if you don't feel you can do that, look at private education if you can. There's a lot of resources out there that weren't there before. And before the pandemic, there's also classical education academies and the like. So, look at your choices before you commit your child to a public school, because you don't want to regret it as they grow older and so on. And God bless you, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Fred.
You've been listening to Raise Them Up, a podcast produced under the direction of the Family Vision Ministry by Family Vision Media. Family Vision Media is a Christian worldview resource helping parents navigate today's culture, news, and politics from a biblical worldview. To find out more about our other resources or to access other episodes of the Raise Them Up podcast, please visit familyvisionmedia.org or email us at info@thefamilyvision.org.